I never imagined I'd live to see someone physically drag my 78-year-old father out of an ambulance. But that's exactly what happened last Tuesday, thanks to our overzealous HOA president, Karen Wilkinson, who decided that her landscaping rules were somehow more important than a man's life. Let me take you back to how this nightmare started. My father, a Vietnam veteran and Purple Heart recipient, had been living with me for about 6 months. After my mom passed away, I didn't want him alone, especially with his history of heart problems. We live in Oakwood Estates, a quiet suburban community that looks perfect on the outside. Every lawn trimmed the same, every mailbox painted the same color, and every flower bed lined up like soldiers on parade. But underneath that perfection was one woman's obsession with control, Karen's. From the day we moved in, she had a problem with everything. The American flag that my dad proudly flew on our porch? Too large by 3 inches according to HOA guidelines. The bird bath he loved sitting by every morning? Attracts disease-carrying wildlife. She'd leave these neat-typed notices in my mailbox every week. Signed in perfect cursive, "Please correct immediately to maintain community standards." I mostly ignored her little power plays. I had work, a household, and a grieving father to take care of. But ignoring Karen only seemed to fuel her obsession. Whenever she'd catch me outside, she'd plaster on this fake, syrupy smile and say, "Mr. Davis, we take our community standards very seriously here. Perhaps if you can't adhere to them, Oakwood Estates isn't the right fit for you." I'd nod politely, smile back, and tell her I'd take her suggestions under advisement. And every single time I'd see her jaw twitch in frustration. She hated that she couldn't control me. Then came Tuesday, a day that started off so ordinary and ended in pure chaos. I was working from home when I heard a loud crash in the kitchen. I ran in to find my father slumped over the counter, clutching his chest. His face was pale, his breathing shallow. My heart nearly stopped. I called 911 immediately and began CPR, my hands trembling. The dispatcher's calm voice guided me through the process, assuring me that help was already on the way. Within minutes, I heard the sirens. Relief flooded through me until I looked out the window. Because there, storming across her flawless front lawn like she was on a mission from the HOA gods, was Karen. The ambulance had barely pulled into our driveway when she intercepted it. Waving her arms like a maniac, "Excuse me," she shouted, her voice slicing through the air. "Commercial vehicles are not permitted to park in residential driveways according to Section 7.3 of our bylaws." The paramedics froze for half a second, confused. "You'll need to park on the street and carry your equipment from there," she barked, her arms flailing as if she were the queen of the cul-de-sac. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "Karen," I yelled from the doorway, "my father's having a heart attack. Let them through!" To their credit, the EMTs didn't waste time arguing. They rushed past her like she didn't exist, carrying their gear straight into the house. They were professionals, focused on saving a life, not playing HOA politics. Within moments, they had my dad stabilized enough to move him. I followed them out as they wheeled him toward the ambulance. That's when Karen stepped in again, this time positioning herself at the end of my driveway, arms crossed, face pinched like she'd just smelled something rotten. "I've documented this violation," she announced coldly, as if she were doing some great public service. "The board will be discussing this at our next meeting, along with your unauthorized garden gnome and those hideous solar lights." I wanted to scream. But my focus was on my father, who was still frighteningly pale. The paramedics maneuvered around her, loaded him into the ambulance, and I climbed in after him, clutching his hand and whispering that everything was going to be all right. And then, as if the day hadn't been insane enough, I heard more shouting. When I looked out the back of the ambulance, Karen was still there. One of the EMTs was trying to close the doors, but she'd wedged herself between them like a human barricade. "You need to move this vehicle immediately," she yelled, her voice rising to a shrill pitch. "It's blocking the view of the neighborhood fountain, and that's a violation of—" "Ma'am," the paramedic interrupted firmly, "we're in the middle of a medical emergency. Please step back." But Karen wasn't done, and then it happened. Before anyone could react, she reached into the ambulance, actually grabbed my father's arm, and started pulling him toward the doors. If your father is well enough to be violating HOA regulations, she hissed, then he's well enough to move this eyesore of a vehicle. For a moment, the entire world just froze. Even now, I can still see that look on her face, pure entitlement mixed with self-righteous fury, as she tugged at a 78-year-old veteran fighting for his life. And that was the exact moment everything changed. My father, still barely conscious and connected to the monitoring equipment, let out a weak groan of pain. The paramedic shouted for assistance while trying to keep him stable. Everything was happening in a blur. The steady beep of the heart monitor, the flashing lights, the adrenaline pumping through my veins, and then instinct just took over. I lunged forward, prying Karen's claw-like grip off my father's arm and shoving her away from the ambulance doors. "Are you insane?" I shouted, my voice breaking under the weight of fear and fury. "He could die if he doesn't get to the hospital right now." Karen stumbled backward, eyes wide, not in shame, but in outrage. Her expression twisted into that familiar mask of entitlement. "How dare you put your hands on me?" she screeched. "This is assault. I am the president of this HOA, and you will respect my authority." And then, like clockwork, she whipped out her phone, holding it up to record. "I want everyone to see how this man and his father have been terrorizing our community with their constant violations," she declared, her voice trembling with self-righteous fury. I couldn't believe it. My father was fighting for his life, and she was worried about content for her HOA Facebook group. But then, salvation arrived. A police car rolled up behind the ambulance, lights flashing. It was standard procedure in our area. Officers often responded alongside paramedics for emergencies. Officer Jenkins stepped out, a tall, steady presence in the chaos. I recognized him immediately from our community outreach events. He was calm, fair, and always professional. The moment his eyes scanned the scene, Karen blocking the ambulance, the paramedics struggling, my father pale and fading, he understood everything without a word being said. Karen, of course, saw him as her ticket to victory. She marched straight toward him, finger pointed right at me. "Officer, I want this man arrested," she barked. "He assaulted me while I was enforcing our community's legally binding covenants. These people have been problematic residents since they arrived." The paramedics, still tending to my father, quickly stepped in. One of them explained how Karen had physically grabbed an elderly patient in critical condition, and that the ambulance's security camera had captured the entire thing. Officer Jenkins listened quietly, his jaw tightening as the story unfolded. Then he turned to Karen, his voice firm and level. "Ma'am, I need you to step away from the ambulance immediately." Karen's face turned crimson. "Do you understand who I am?" she hissed. "I have the full backing of the neighborhood board and our attorney. These people violate at least 7— "Ma'am," Officer Jenkins cut her off sharply, "I don't care if you're the Queen of England. You're interfering with emergency medical personnel and endangering a patient's life. Step away now." But of course, Karen didn't. Instead, she reached into her tote bag, pulled out a folder, and began waving a stack of HOA bylaws like they were divine law. "These are the regulations of Oakwood Estates," she shouted. "You have to respect our standards." That's when Officer Jenkins made his move. With calm precision, he reached for his cuffs and said the words that made the entire street go silent. "Karen Wilkinson, you are under arrest for assault and interfering with emergency medical services." The crowd that had gathered, neighbors peeking out from their porches and driveways, gasped. Karen's face drained of color. "You can't do this. I'm the HOA president," she protested, but it didn't matter. Jenkins gently turned her around, cuffed her wrists, and began reading her rights. As he guided her to the police car, she kept shouting about property values and neighborhood integrity, insisting she was just doing her job. The irony of it all, that the self-proclaimed guardian of community standards being taken away in handcuffs, wasn't lost on anyone. The ambulance finally pulled away, sirens wailing, carrying my father to the hospital. And by some miracle, thanks to the paramedics' speed and professionalism, he made it in time. The doctor said that if there had been even a few more minutes of delay, the outcome could have been fatal. 3 weeks later, I found myself sitting in a county courtroom, watching Karen stand before a judge who looked like he'd seen one too many self-important busybodies in his time. The evidence was overwhelming. The video footage from the ambulance, the paramedics' testimonies, the police report. The verdict didn't take long. Karen Wilkinson was found guilty of assault and interference with emergency medical services. Her sentence, 200 hours of community service at the very same VA hospital where my father was now recovering. She was also fined $5,000 and ordered to complete an anger management course. But it was the judge's closing remarks that truly ended Karen's reign of terror. He leaned forward, looked her straight in the eye, and said, "Miss Wilkinson, your position as HOA president does not place you above the law or above basic human decency. I'm also issuing a restraining order prohibiting you from coming within 100 feet of Mr. Davis or his father. You could actually see the color drain from her face. That restraining order meant she couldn't legally step foot near my house or serve on the HOA board ever again." Her composure cracked for the first time. "But, Your Honor," she sputtered, "I've been president for 7 years. The community needs me." "Who will enforce the standards?" The judge raised an eyebrow, unimpressed. "I suggest you find a new hobby, Ms. Wilkinson. Preferably one that doesn't involve harassing elderly veterans." And with a single sharp crack of his gavel, it was over. Karen Wilkinson, the self-proclaimed guardian of Oakwood Estates, was officially dethroned. As I walked out of the courtroom, I felt a wave of relief wash over me. My father, though still recovering, was alive, and for the first time in months our home was peaceful. No more violation letters. No more threats. No more Karen. Her so-called kingdom had finally fallen, and the neighborhood she ruled with fear finally exhaled.